Welcome to OAC Vancouver's podcast. Thank you for tuning in. We believe that Jesus is needed and relevant for people in Vancouver today. The message of God's love and promise of wholeness was destined to be experienced within a faith community that worships, studies scripture, and prays together. We warmly welcome you to journey with us towards greater connection, purpose, and peace. We'll be sharing our recorded services and conversations with health and wellness experts. Enjoy.
I first wanted to touch on, I recognize between the three of you, there are three very unique experiences. And the hope within, sharing this conversation is that everyone's going to identify with a little bit of something, in your stories, in your journeys. And one thing that, I think of is, within faith communities, we talk a lot about God's unconditional love. And this, for me, it feels really hard to wrap my mind around it sometimes. I know it's true. I believe that God loves me unconditionally. I feel that I do experience it, but there's like this connection that sometimes doesn't click into place. Would you say that in your experience of motherhood, that has made a little more sense for you, like in loving someone unconditionally, that you've been able to better understand that God's love? Whoever feels like taking a stab at that question first. Saren, I'll throw you in.
Has mothering helped me to have a clearer understanding or feel God's unconditional love more closely? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Growing up in the Caribbean, and I'll be 50 this year. So I think we grew up in an era where parenting and the world typically was focused on behaviorism. And so, like, as I said in my introduction, my whole life I have kind of been mothering, and I've loved kids, and kids have gravitated towards me. And still I was like strict. I don't know if you understand when I say strict. It's like, you do what I say because I say this is what you do. And even though I love you and we have lots of fun together, like, still you do what I say because I said it, and that's it. And punishment is also a part of that. And as I became closer to becoming a mom, God started really becoming a focused mom for just my two kids. God started really touching my heart more about that concept. It's just like, do you do what I say just because I say it? And is punishment really supposed to be a part of this dynamic? And in punishment, is love seen, or is love disconnected in that? And then as I became a mom and started parenting my kids, I felt that disconnection in punishment more. The word is eluding me right now, but just more keenly.
Yes.
And I was reading the 23rd Psalm one day, and the idea of the rod and staff, your rod and staff, they comfort me. And I just started crying. And I was just like, why are you crying? And the Spirit is just like, because what is the rod? And so I was just like, what is the rod? And I went into researching. I'm like, a shepherd. What is a shepherd? What is a shepherd's rod? Like, what does a shepherd do with his rod? And it's like, it's comforting and guiding. And there is no punishment. It's protection and guidance. It's discipling. It's like, let me help you find the right path, like the best path for you. And in that, God is just like, is that not how I am with you? And so, like, that was probably like a big turning point, especially because as I felt the disconnection, of punishment with my kids and saw the impact that it had on them, I recognized the impact that thinking of God as a punishing God, as a punishing parent, what that impact that had on me. And so my journey to becoming best friends with God changed in that setting.
Wow. So that really just sort of expanded
Yeah.
your perspective of
Yeah.
God and how he demonstrates his love and interacts with us.
Yes.
That's
And so for me, God's unconditional love is the core of the message of my life now. I'm mama mamas as well. And everything I do is focused on helping us like get to that place of love and compassion for ourselves and seeing how God sees us, as David expresses in Psalm 103, and just revolutionizing unconditional love between God and us, and between God and each other, and especially between God and our kids.
Yeah. So yeah, I see. No, I see you responding, and I was about to call on you and like, what are your thoughts as you're hearing this?
Well, I know you. No, it's just really powerful. Um, I actually was just thinking more about your question.
Yeah.
About unconditional love and how mothering, God's unconditional love and ours. And, when you have your little one, biologically or however, and then you bring them home, it's easy to how God had creation, then delighted in it. It's really easy to delight in them, and you just feel all this love, and you don't have to think about it or be mindful about it. And then I find that, as your little one grows, um, it's no longer about this little one you're just naturally drawn to love. You start to, uh, you start to zoom out, and then you have interactions that aren't always so delightful, or and sometimes you're downright angry. And I was reading a really powerful quote this week about it's okay to be angry, but anger is not a license for careless words. And um and it made me realize that, sometimes I have those careless words. I do still love them. And I look back and I think, yeah, I remember times when my mom had careless words with me when she was angry. But it didn't mean that she had stopped loving me. I think she was afraid for me, the consequences of my actions. And she was still loving me in her own flawed way, the way I love in my own flawed way. And so, yeah, for me, unconditional love is about zooming out, having that zoomed out view the way God does, except God has a little bit more clarity and wisdom behind that zoomed out view. And then just loving through that. And so, yeah, the unconditional part is just, there are going to be times when you're more disconnected, but the love is there. The intent is
Distant.
the intent is there. Exactly.
I love that. That's beautiful. AJ, as you're hearing these sort of perspectives, is there anything that's sort of jumping out that resonates with your heart?
I just remember when I was pregnant for the first time, I was thinking, am I going to love this baby the way that God loves me? I was thinking, how will I show love? How will I give love? And then it wasn't until after I gave birth and I saw Ashira for the first time, I was like, wow, I was out of words.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't cry. Like, I was still in shock. But when we drove home about, let's say, 2 kilometers, I just bawled. And I was like, wow, like I see the world in a different light now. And it just reminded me how, like, really how unfathomable God's love is. My child this year, she didn't need to be anything. She did not need to do anything. She just needed to be herself. And for me, that she was perfect already. And I think I just realize how God sees each and every one of us so perfect in our own little ways, in our own flawed ways. And it just resonates with me how his love really is unconditional. We don't need to do anything to earn his love, but he loves us because he loves us.
Exactly. And I think that really ties into what you were saying, Alicia, and that sort of zoomed out perspective that, God sees each and every one of us. Like he sees the days when it's just we're the best versions of ourselves and he loves us. And then he sees us also, on the days when we're human. We experience the full range of human emotions, behaviors. And in the same way that your heart has capacity for your little ones when they're being children or, big children, that love and that tie, it never changes. Is that something that surprised you, would you say, just how that clicked into place and just that the capacity that your heart had to love another in that way? Was that a surprise to you?
I'll start off.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was a surprise, but I think it really brought it home to me. So my mom, when we talk about motherhood, you can't help but think about your first impressions of who a mom is. And I realize that when I think of my mom, I think of mother as more of a verb than a noun because of who she was and how she lived our life, how we lived our lives with her. She was very much a nurturer, a protector, and self-sacrificing.
Yeah.
Maybe to a flaw. I should also mention that my mom actually had kind of a wounded childhood in some ways.
Okay.
And so, sometimes wounded people wound as well. And I don't think that was ever her intent, like, hey, I want to wound my kids, but we're flawed. We do things in the way we've seen or the way we sometimes emotionally are driven to, and it wounds. That's the impact, if not the intent. But I do remember her doing things tirelessly and self-sacrificially and being resourceful. And I remember, if I was sick, she was like, when you're in and out of sleep, because all you want to do is sleep all day, or you're drugged, you open your eyes and she's there with soup. You open your eyes again, she's there with medicine. You open your eyes again, she's there with a compress. And there was just that presence, knowing that when I opened my eyes, she was gonna be there. And I remember growing up, and I don't think I grew up knowing that I wanted to be a mother. Some people are like, oh, when I grow up and I'm gonna play mommy, and that wasn't necessarily me. But when I think what surprised me is how much you just, I'm trying to remember the question now, I'll be honest.
No,
Did I just were you surprised? What I hear you saying, like you're really touching on the identity.
Yeah.
Right. So the nuance between, your identity as an individual, but then as your identity of, developing within motherhood. That's what I'm hearing you share.
Yeah. And I think just, I don't know if it surprised me, but it just kind of envelops you, and you just become it. And I feel like even before taking on the title and wearing the title, I feel like I was wearing the action. You know what I mean? Like, because of the way I saw it in my mom, and that she made me think of mother as a verb more than a noun.
And I find it interesting, what you share, because as someone who's not a mother in the traditional sense, I think of the change, like it's such a big change in life, in personal identity. I look at my life and my routine and sort of that thought of, things changing. Sometimes I know we have some new moms in our congregation, and those who are, soon to be moms. And that, to me at least, is a scary thought, that idea of your identity as an individual, but then how's that going to change? And how's that going to change relationship with your loved ones, your relationship with God, Am I going to be a different person? I remember, even in just the stages in life where we ask ourselves, God, can I still be me and still be like your person? And then
motherhood, I can imagine, just adds a whole new layer of identity as a woman, as in relationship with God.
I never wanted to have children like that.
Really?
Yeah. So like, and when I say that, I was determined that I was never going to be pregnant. I was never going to biologically have kids. I'm like, that's stupid. Who thought that was a good idea? And and literally like that was my thing throughout my life. And I was just like, that's like in all
Story.
no, I was just like in all ways it makes no sense. And um and I was still mothering, right? Because I was nurturing all the little people around me. And then I got to a place in my life where I realized I actually did want to have my mothering focused on other little human beings that were just where I was their primary nurturer. And if we're talking about when I think you asked earlier, the last question was about being surprised about around whether or not you were able to just love this. And reflecting on Alicia's relationship with her mom and mothering, my mom was that kind of very present mom. And 100% of the time throughout my life, I consistently said to her, "You don't love me." Like consistent, it was like, "You don't love me. I have no idea why you don't love me, but you don't love me." So that, I'm just like, "You don't love me. I love you, and I love other people, but you don't love me." And so, yeah, it was this. I don't know what my understanding of love was, but I did know that there was some kind of disconnect between my mom and me. And even though she did all those things, like the things that we do that we think show love, which is, like the taking care of, the clothing, the like defending, the advocating, like all of it. Because she was like a warrior advocate for her kids. And she definitely taught us how to be that way and how to stand on purpose and passion and with integrity in life. And still, I had that, like, "You don't love me. Like, this is something, this is not love." And then when I started parenting my kids and doing all those same things, I'm just like, I'm doing all these things and I love you. And because we came to be a family through adoption, there's also, for me, there's adoption anxiety. For my kids, there's adoption anxiety and the grief and loss attached to that. And so in all of that, there is still that like, is this like what this is supposed to be? Is this really love? Like what's happening here? And so, yeah, we have had to like really wrestle with that idea of what love really is. And so I had to do a lot of therapy because I'm just like, I love my kids. I'm doing all of this. And I felt the disconnect. And in doing that, that's why I embrace Psalm 103 so closely, because it's a psalm that God used to like begin to heal that wound. God is just like, yes, your mom loved you, to the point where I went through a process where I like literally felt all the love that I had never felt from my mom in my life as I went through a clearing process in therapy attached to that. And God was just like, you see, she did love you. And there is these things that you have been doing. When you show compassion to your kids, when you're just open, when you accept them as they are, this is where that the surprise of love comes in. And so, yeah, that's how that's been for me.
I feel that super, just as I hear you sharing, my mind is immediately going to how many of us sit and we question or we wonder sort of like, I know, like, I feel I see the ways God is loving me, but does it really sit, am I able to fully embrace it? And again, I know that the experiences you're sharing that very specific, through the process of adoption and the anxieties that you mentioned that exist there. I think, they can resonate in other ways in terms of the anxieties that we maybe can feel towards sort of like God, and I think to myself as you're speaking, sometimes you have to sort of give yourself over to that risk of the love in knowing that what you can get out of it, of, the safety of that knowledge, of that embrace. And it's not a one-time thing. I can imagine in all of your journeys in different ways, it's a continual sort of affirmation to self and to your children,
Yes. I mean, actually, I was thinking, I was thinking, I do that sometimes. And on the way here about motherhood, and sometimes you think like, okay, I've got one shot. And I realized, motherhood is not a one shot thing. You have lots of shots all through the day, every day for years. And I'm so thankful for that. And I also realized that my relationship with God isn't a one shot thing, you know. And yeah, and I mean it just starts to, I so let me first resolve this thought, because you had asked about, if it surprised us about, the love, the unconditional love of motherhood. And it was more like I knew my whole life I hadn't purposed that I was going to be a mother, because I looked at what my mother did and thought, I didn't want to do that, or I couldn't do that the way she did. And then when I became a mother, I didn't even think about it or decide to do it. It just did it. I just
happened
became it.
naturally.
Yeah. So I think that part was surprising. And thank you for helping me bring that thought back. And maybe I'll pause.
It's fine. I have, I wish we could keep this conversation going longer, because I'm definitely I have a million and one questions, but that's just me as a personality. Um, but AJ, I'd love to just ask you, if you could speak to your younger self, or perhaps even to someone who is considering exploring the journey of motherhood in all its different ways, based on your experience today, what advice or words of wisdom would you share?
I think first and foremost is definitely have a relationship with God. Talk to Him every day in the mundane moments, in the big moments, in the little, when you're happy and you're sad. Talk to Him, and also take time to hear Him out. And then I think second would be to trust yourself and trust your gut. A lot of people will tell you certain things. Do this, don't do this. I believe this is how you should raise your kids. But you know what? You know your kids best. You spend time with them all the time. So hear what they have to say, but also take to heart what really is best for my kids. And then take it a day at a time. Like what Alicia was saying, you have a lot of shots during the day. Sometimes you have a cranky morning and you can make it up during the day with your kids, and take it a day at a time, because not every day is easy. You will have opportunities to reclaim yourself. Like for me right now, I have a toddler and a baby. I don't have patience all the time. I'm learning every day that patience is a gift from God, and that's something we can learn from Him. And what I believe my personal motto in life is Matthew 6:33, to just put Him first and everything will follow. Just let go and let God. Have total surrender, and there's no way you can be lost, because you'll be with Him every step of the way.
Oh, that is beautiful. I just want to thank the three of you so much for getting up here. I know it is intimidating to sit in front of this room. Like you are all wonderful, but it can be scary up here. But to vulnerably share your experiences and your heart, it is deeply appreciated. And, for our community, whether you're joining us here today or maybe watching online, whatever your relationship and experience is with motherhood, to know that God sees us and He meets us where we are. I love what you all shared just around, every day there are multiple
opportunities to try again and to try again, whether in your mothering journey, your parenting journey, or even just in your relationship with God and others. You know, we keep doing our best and knowing that God loves us. And even if it doesn't always make sense, continually being open to that pursuit of understanding, of, reducing those anxieties and those uncertainties, and being open to something maybe new and different that we haven't experienced before. Something that is uniquely curated between ourselves and God, ourselves and those we're in a relationship with.
Thank you for listening to OAC Vancouver's podcast. Learn more at oacvancouver.ca. If you're in Vancouver, join us for worship Saturdays at 11 a.m. at 5350 Bailey Street. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate, review, and subscribe. God bless you and have a wonderful day.